Good morning. We are on page 263 in Math Today, and we are learning about the area of a square. Now, we've already learned about the area of a rectangle, which I wrote down here just as a reminder. Keeping our formulas in mind, you want to memorize your formulas, learn them. So to find the area of a rectangle, it's A equals length times width, or you can write it A equals LW, because any two things next to each other in math equals times. So A equals length times width, because you're finding everything that's inside the area. Remember, you're not finding the perimeter, which is just around it. You're finding everything inside. So it's going to be into square units. Remember, we use squared when it comes to areas. It's separated into units, and then the length is going to be one size, and then the width is going to be one size. And so when you multiply the length times the width, that's going to tell you everything that's inside that area of the rectangle. Now, we're going to be learning the area of a square. Now, the area of a square can be found by using the formula A equals S times S. Now, keeping in mind, a square is the same on all sides. A rectangle has two the same and two the same. But a square, all four sides equal the same number. So you can just do you multiply the side times the side because all the sides are the same. So it can be written A equals S times S, or it can be written A equals S squared. Now, S with the little 2 over it, like that, S with the little 2 has to be above it to the right of it, is read A equals S squared. When a number is squared, then that means the number is multiplied by itself. So any number that's squared, you times it by itself. So this would not be S times 2. No. S squared means S times S. S times itself. So example, if the side is, let's go ahead and do it. The example that's on your page there on 263, the example of squaring a number, if you wrote 4 squared, that's a 4 with the little 2 right to the right of it on top, 4 squared, that is the same as saying 4 times 4. So 4 squared equals 16. Okay, so this is 4 squared means 4 by itself. So any number squared, when you have this little 2 top right, that means times itself. It does not mean times 2. Don't get confused. It means times itself. So 4 squared equals 4 times 4. If I had 9 with the little 2 to the top to the right, that means 9 squared. That equals the same as if you were saying 9 times 9. Okay? So 9 squared is the same as saying 9 times 1. That's why you can say for the area of a square, you can do side times side, or you can do side squared, because all the sides of a square are going to be the same. So it's not, this side isn't going to be different from this side, it's going to be the same. So you just do the side by itself, side times itself. So that is learning squaring, and that's going to come in later on, so you want to learn that, make sure you understand it. If you don't understand, ask questions, and I will try to help you understand. So when you're finding the area of a square, and it gives you the if it gives you the size, then you're going to times that by the side by itself. So let's do the class practice number 1, the story problem. Mr. Thomas is planting grass in the front yard. So he's not just doing it around the yard, he's doing it all in the front yard. So that's why you need to find the area of the square. His yard is a square, so you know that you're going to use the square formula because it's not a rectangle, it's a square. That is 30 feet on each side. If it's a square, if one side is 30 feet, that means every side is 30 feet because that is how squares are. They're all equal. How many square feet of grass must he plant? So how many feet of grass does he need? So we have our formula, A equals S times S. So I want to find out how many feet of grass he needs, that he needs to plant. We know that our side is 30 feet. So using this formula, I can do A equals 30 times 30 or A equals 30 squared. That means the same thing. 30 squared would equal 30 times 30. So let's multiply it out. So we see, after we've multiplied it out, he needs, his area equals 900, and remember, if it's after you are finding the area, it's no longer feet, it's square feet. So he needs 900 square feet of grass in order to fill his whole yard with grass. So you can write it A equals 30 times 30, or you can do A equals 30 squared. It means the same thing. Any number squared is times itself. It's not times 2, it is times itself. So that's how you find the area of a square. So let's go into number 2. You're gonna do all of page 263 on your own, so do the other word problem. Remember that if there's 2 different types of units, you have to change them all into the same type of unit. Now find the areas of squares with these dimensions. So let's do A to A. So your side is 9.3 feet. First thing you do is put it in your formula. So A equals 9.3 times 9.3, or you can say it this way, A equals 9.3 squared. So multiply it out. And add that. 7 7 is 14. 6. Remember to do your decimal point properly. Put it in the proper spot. So your answer is 86.49. So the area is of this square is 86.49, and I don't know if it told us feet. So square, because you've found the area, you've multiplied it, it's square feet now. So 86.49 square feet. Be careful with your decimal points. Remember, when you multiply, you add the decimal from 1, 2, you move it over 2 spots, okay? You don't just bring it down like with addition. With multiplication, you bring it over. So that is how you find the area, and then you have finding the areas of the rectangles, which you've already done. Remember to use your formula. A equals length times width. Okay, that is the area of a rectangle. So remember your formulas. That will really help you in the long run. Okay, now go ahead and do all of page 263, and then on page 265, it's really, we've already talked about it. It's just going a little bit deeper into squares and square roots. Now I've already talked to you about square roots, and if the area of a square is the product of this side by itself. So the product means when you're talking about multiplication. So the area of a square is the side times itself, because squares are all the same all the way around. So if the square side is 3 units, 3 feet, then to find the area, it's 3 times 3. And that is finding the area, which equals 9. Or you can say it, like I already said, 3 squared, which means 3 times 3, and that equals 9. So when you're saying something is squared, you write the small 2 right above it to the right of it. Don't write it next to it, because that means 3 times 2. You have to do it a little bit above, make it a little bit smaller, and right to the right. Now that is called an exponent, and you're going to need to know this later on. So this little 2, when you're saying squared, that is called an exponent. Sometimes it's going to be a 3 or a 4, and that's stuff you're going to learn later on. But for now, it's 3 times 3, so 3 squared. That little 2 is called an exponent. And the exponent 2 means to multiply the number by the base. This is your base, so multiply the number by itself. So anytime you see a little 2 next to a number, that means to multiply that number by itself when it's small and up to the right. Now the process that is opposite squaring is called the square root. And this is the symbol used for a square root. It looks almost like division, but don't get it confused. You go over, and then it goes down, and then it comes back up like that. That is a square root symbol. And this is used how to find the square root. So if I have 25, and I want to find the square root, so what times what equals 25? What number times itself equals 25? I know that 5 times 5 equals 25. 9, if I'm finding the square root of 9, I know that it's a number times itself. Because 3 squared equals 9, then I know that the square root of 9 is 3. So think of it as like the root of a tree, okay? The 9 is the tree, it's the branches, but you want to find the root. What made it a 9? What times itself made it a 9? It's 3 times 3 equals 9. So the square root of something can only be a number times itself. So 5 times 5 is 25. So 5 is the square root of 25. 3 times 3 equals 9. So 3 is the square root of 9. It's what's at the base of 9. 3 times itself equals 9. So any number times itself, that means squared. So 12 times 12, for example, is 144. Well, then if I'm trying to find the square root of 144, I have to think what number times itself equals 144, and that would be 12. So that's a little bit to learn about square root. That's something we'll be learning about later. So just remember that 3 times 3 is the same as saying 3 squared. Okay, and that's 9. And if you want to find the square root of something, you can only find the square root of numbers times itself. So for example, square root of 25 has to be 5 times 5. That's the only number times itself that equals 25. And then the same with 9. What number times itself equals 9? Only 3 times 3 equals 9. So 3, that's the root of 9. It's the square root of 9. So hopefully you understood all of that. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Go ahead and go through the class practice. Read the directions slowly and just follow it along. It should be pretty simple. And you're finding the areas, you're finding the square roots, and it's going to explain more later on, but just read the directions and go ahead and finish all of page 265. All right, guys, have fun. Bye.